Buffet offers you unlimited food at a set price. Open 7 days for lunch and dinner. Catering, wedding and party services available too. Call 01733 566 320 or visit 2020buffet.co.uk. 2020 World Buffet, 35 New Road, Peterborough, PE1 1FJ.
Do you own a restaurant or takeaway? Cater Fair is an expert supplier of new and used commercial catering equipment. Visit caterfair.co.uk for quality equipment on sale at the lowest prices, or call us on 01733 310 115 or visit us at 11 Royce Road, Fengate, Peterborough.
This is Salam Radio, Peterborough's Muslim community radio, broadcasting on 106.2 FM and online.
Welcome back to Salam Radio. Assalamu alaikum. We're coming to you on 106.2 FM. And time to introduce myself. My name's Eva, and I'm here today with my co-host Nisha. And we are here with a brand new show called Community Connection. And this is a space to talk about challenges facing the community, but also the leading people and organisations in the community. We're here to talk about the strengths and the challenges, all the good and bad. So, Nisha, tell us a bit more about you.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Really excited to be back on the show. But, Eva, so we as a community, well, how can I start? As part of the community, by profession, I'm a community manager. I work for the City Council. My colleague here, Eva, she works for the Combined Authority now, but I had the pleasure of her having a whole year with her as a trainee in the City Council under myself in the communities team. We do a lot of volunteering in the community as well, so the foresight that we have and the insights that we have developed quite quickly. I myself am not from Peterborough. I've been here for 5 years, and Eva's been born and bred, so it's a good combination, really. And we thought to ourselves, well, you know, we've got all this, we talk about this stuff all the time, we've got all this knowledge. When we did our work, we had obviously knowledge of funding applications, funders, and we got to know the scene, and we kind of set the scene as well with the work that we did. So we decided that we would do this show so that we could build a bridge between for the viewers to listen to us, and we can take on views from others who call in, just to bridge a gap between the community and what's been happening strategically, like through the City Council, through the Combined Authority, just to fill that gap in. So it's a good opportunity for us, I think. So that's what this is the reason why we kind of thought of the show. But we do have other sort of things that we think about in our personal lives, issues that we talk about, that others talk about, and our coffee groups talk about. So it would be good to bring those issues in as well, because community is about everything. People think it's just about, like, you know, sports and all those kind of things, but it's everything. Community deals with issues from family issues to street violence to all sorts. So it's an exciting time.
It will be so interesting to dig into what community means to different people in the city, because that's what we're here for, to talk about what we love in the city, but also what challenges we're facing. I mean, I think it will be good to actually define that as well, and to hear from you. What do you think community means? But there are all kinds of topics we're hoping to dig into over time. I mean, Nisha, give us a flavour about some of the things that we want to explore through the show.
Yeah, so for this show, I think we're going to touch on asset-based development, which is a theory. So I'm going to name drop now, but Sister Samina from the ISLA, the research project, social research project, held a conference at University of Peterborough. She's done it last year, and they've been doing it for a couple of years now. And they've invited us to come and talk about stuff that we do in the City Council specifically. And she didn't say City Council specifically, but she said, you know, if you could kind of link it with the statutory provisions,
of course,
then that could be like a good way of showing the community how theory is used at a practical level, sort of thing. So I saw it as an opportunity, and today I'm going to speak about asset-based community development and how that theory has led to some of the decisions that we've made in the council in terms of projects and stuff. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But in the future, I think I'll just we've had a bit of a brainstorm about a couple of things that we would talk about, like things like knife crime, domestic violence.
It's heavy stuff.
Yeah, everything, youth provision in the city. So as and when it becomes a hot topic, we'll bring that to the show, and hopefully we can have your input as well.
Exactly, and that's the point. It's to bounce off what the hot topics are at the moment, and whether it's taboo or whether it's all over the place, it still is worthy of discussion. And actually, what we find in our day-to-day lives is there are so many fantastic organisations and people at a grassroots level in Peterborough who are doing loads to support those in need. But not everybody knows how to access them, or perhaps there's funding and opportunities out there and they're just not reaching this amazing organisation or this amazing person. So either the knowledge isn't there from the people who need support, or the knowledge isn't there from the people who are able to fund support. And that's what Community Connection is all about, pulling all of that together with the common interest of just bringing more benefits to the community, inshallah. So do get in touch with us, do let us know what you think. But yes, today, asset-based community development. We're going to be bringing some of this theory to life, and that's what the ISLA conference that we initially presented this at was fantastic for, because it's all about bringing research back into the community. But Nisha, give us an intro to asset-based community development. What on earth does ABCD mean?
Well, instead of just being an acronym, let's talk about what it actually means. When I first joined the council about 5 years ago, we did an integration programme which developed from the Green Paper. And one of the projects which I was project managing out of about 5 community integration projects was the ABCD project. Now, what that means is it stands for Asset-Based Community Development. Now, that theory, first when I saw it, I was like, oh, what is this? It's all new to me. But what we did as a city council is we funded an organisation who are experts at this field called Nurture Development to come in and provide some training to our community members, our leaders, our groups. So we funded this project. It was supposed to be a seed funding project that was initially for about 6 months to a year. And we rolled out this training programme. Now, I went on to the training programme and I took the training myself, and it was amazing. Basically, essentially what it is it looks at the current climate of how communities at grassroots levels have developed over the years, and the changes in the, the fact that we're at quite a difficult financial position as a country, where we haven't got as much funding available to communities and charity and voluntary sector organisations. It looked at all that and how the impact was on community development. Now, the whole theory looks at how. So I'm going to start off by saying what you're going to learn from this hopefully take away from this after I've finished, is that the whole focus is on what's strong in the community and not what's wrong. So, in historical times, local authorities have had loads of pots of money for grants, for funding, left, right and centre, and there has been a culture of giving out big grants to communities. People could say that's been a good thing, and a lot of communities have developed from that. However, there's an argument to say that with regards to sustainability, there's a bit of a reliance of organisations having reliance on the government and the state to kind of fit the bill and fill the gaps for funding. And therefore, when it comes to looking at projects and their organisations, they have taken a bit of a backseat and not thought about sustainability and how to bring in funding on a sustainable level. Unfortunately, whilst we're discussing this as a theory, in reality, since COVID and since other sort of events like the cost of living crisis, austerity has hit the community quite hard. And even though it's not been something that's wanted at such a fast pace extent, the cuts and the budget cuts have just happened really all of a sudden. So the impact has been quite negative on voluntary organisations. Therefore, City Council thought if we bring this this nurture development organisation to deliver this training for ABCD, it might help community organisations think about things like sustainability and what we're thinking about. People could argue it's a way of the council kind of saying, we haven't got any money, therefore, you kind of see it like that, can't you, Eva?
Well, it's true, isn't it? There are limited resources in our whole ecosystem, and that word sustainability is so important. How can we make sure that when we're investing money, that is going to go as far as possible? And one of the best ways to do that is by exploring what works as well as what's missing. I mean, we hear a lot of talk about needs assessments and gap mapping and trying to identify what's missing in communities. What services do people not have that they need? But actually, we've been in a period of austerity for quite a long time. And it's interesting because by day, I work in Youth Voice. Nisha said I work for the Combined Authority, but I also do bits with all kinds of youth organisations in Peterborough and in Leicester and in Cambridge. And I work with a lot of young people to try and encourage them to talk about what services they need and what support they want and what's missing in their lives. And it's so hard because if you're young and you've never known a time when there's loads of money in the system and there's all kinds of programs and there's youth outreach, and if you've never known that, then you don't know what you're missing out on, if that makes sense. So starting from a position of what works and what's good is actually much more tangible. So Nisha, tell us a bit about what an asset is. What might be an asset?
So I've given you a bit of a background about what the rationale was about bringing this in, but actually it's a way of thinking. It's a theory that does change the mindset, and personally it's helped me in my job in the sense that it's helped me recognise the strengths of a community and a group when it comes to decision making with funding. So when it comes to funding groups, we look at groups that have got a kind of plan for sustainability. They have got a plan for plugging the gap without the reliance on funding. And the funding that we provide, actually, we have to make it go further. So when, as a council, the whole theory is that with this whole asset-based development thinking, it helps me certainly in my decision making as to who gets the funding and what projects are suitable for a sustainability point of view. So let's go back a few steps and talk about what asset-based development means. So asset-based development, essentially what that means is you look at a community and you look at what assets there are. So assets could be, people might think, what is an asset? Okay, so I'll give you an example in Peterborough. I'm going to use Peterborough examples. So assets in Peterborough are, one are our community buildings, two are our green spaces, so that's like Itter Park, Neen Park, all those sort of things. Three could be leisure facilities. Four, the biggest one is our people. Now, people can go as far as anyone. So everyone is considered with this theory to be an asset. What does that mean practically? That means our doctors, our nurses, our teachers, our presenters, our council officers, our councillors, but also our refugees. Let's not forget them, our homeless. Everyone is seen as an asset. So how beautiful is that, where you go into a way of thinking to say there's something from everyone that can add to the community, whether you're a homeless person, whether you're a refugee, or whether you're a doctor. Now that in itself is quite, empowering. And that's the whole purpose, that this theory looks at what is strong in a community. So I've just named some of those assets in Peterborough, and not what is wrong in a community. And the whole idea is by looking at the strengths of a community when it comes to the authorities, like the local authorities and government and public health and all those kind of strategic planners, when they look at the strengths of the community, they will look at what's there and what can be developed rather than recreating the wheel. So there has been a lot of discussion in communities where I see it all the time, where they're like, oh, well, council has funded this big organisation that's not in Peterborough, brought them in, and added, given them a 3-year contract for funding, where look at Peterborough, we have 4 different groups already doing it. So what would ABCD be like in that sort of situation? Well, that would be that, come on, we've got 4 groups. Why don't we get those groups together? Why don't we form one whole joint organisation. Let's make them an entity on their own. They're doing the job as it is. They know the people at a neighbourhood level. So in that situation, it would be a case of let's fund what's already there. And that has its own benefits rather than bringing an outside organisation in. So that's just an example of how asset-based development theory works. And
it's good for the local economy as well,
definitely.
Right? To invest in our local organisations. And I mean, talking about asset-based community development, you've summed it up so beautifully there, in that we're looking at what's strong and not what's wrong. And I guess a question I'd have is, it's difficult for funders, whether that be like a third sector funder or whether it's local government or the health sector, when they're looking to do asset-based community development. And Nisha, I guess you've got experience of this as someone who works in the council. How can organisations like that go about finding assets in the community that are actually meaningful to people? Because it's hard to do when you're outside, right?
That's
if you're on
right.
the outside looking in and you're thinking, what do people in, I don't know, the Millfield area really value?
Yeah.
If you're not embedded in that community already, then it must be really hard to allocate that funding, right?
Yes,
so
definitely.
What's your advice there?
So I can give you a live example, actually. And again, I probably get told off for name dropping it. But basically, Living Sports is a funder, and they have connections with Sports England as well. And I had a really interesting conversation with Living Sport, and it's just a simple example of how what Eva's just said, how it works. So they have big conferences. They have, they pull people together. They had this recent conference, a 2 days conference, which was to do with how they should put their resources into Peterborough. Now, I had a coffee with them, and I always believe in inviting people. So people joke and they say Chai Pani is my office now. But before there was Carrick Chai, and then it's the library. So I do move around, but I do like being embedded in the community, because how am I supposed to help with needs if I don't see it with my own eyes? It does help a lot just being there and listening to conversations and seeing what people go through. So I always bring partners into the Millfield area, and I'm like, come and have a look, come and have a coffee, come and have a Carrick Chai, actually. That's what I say. And it's amazing how many people love it. So Living Sports, I invited them to Chai Pani, and it's almost like I told them, I spoke about groups that were existing groups in the Millfield area that don't really get the platform, to be honest, not for all the wrong reasons. It's just it's probably just been like that since COVID, where we haven't actually been able to reach out to them and give them a platform to talk about the good work they do. But groups such as Next Gen, FC Peterborough, Top Yard Football, School of Boxing, Futura Wrestling, all these inner city Millfield groups that I'm very familiar with, my son attends, those groups were not known to Living Sport. So Living Sport were like, wow, you've blown my mind. I can't believe what level they're at. So with bringing that conversation in, the next step was to get them to meet those groups individually. And then when it comes to their funding, they tailor it, and they have that knowledge as to, okay, this group might need help with a building or equipment or whatever it is. And it's just having that neighbourhood level conversation to say, come and see our community and see what's strong, not what's wrong. Because the first conversation starts with, there's not enough sports facilities in Peterborough, which is a reality, yes. But how do we combat that? We show what's strong in the community. Let's develop it. Let's get it rolled out. Let's then get it joined with the Alliance project, which is a police project that tackles things like criminal activities, because even being a part of the Alliance project, when it comes to funding bids, you're working with the police, you're working with the Home Office for big projects. So that's just an example, Eva, of how we do that, and how did we practically do it. So a part of asset-based community development is, how do you look at what's strong? You have to do mapping, and that's a tedious task. And my little Eva here, she's done a brilliant job of it. She did all the youth mapping for the Alliance project, and now partners are loving it. They're like, oh, where's that slide, Eva? That's how it works, and they love it. Yeah, it's just place-based research. It's just saying, okay, this one's in this location, this one's in this map, this is the opening hours. Even though it's a tedious task, someone has to do it. So what I mean is a part of it is mapping what's already good out there, what's already bad out there even. When we say bad, it's not a negative, but there are some groups that are more successful than others. Does that mean we leave them out? No, we don't. We don't do that. So you have to go in with a lens which is a benefit. I think it's beneficial for me to not be part of Peterborough in that sense. Now I am for 5 years, mashallah, but I came in as I kind of had the view of no attachments, nothing. So it's kind of, I had the same for everyone. And that's how we try to be equal for all, access to all. So there's only a small group of us in our communities team. It's like now we've lost out Eva, but it's like there's 3 of us, but Eva's still there. She's always there, part of any project that there's any volunteering, she'll still come and do it. But
so there's singing my praises now. I was just thinking that you mentioned not reinventing the wheel, and I think also in terms of, my theory, if ABCD, asset-based community development, is your theory that informs the way you work, I guess mine is co-production, and I talk a lot about co-production. And I guess if you co-produce with community organisations and you think, hey, we've got this project, who's already doing work in this space, who can bring so much expertise to our planning process. I guess you mentioned it's important to map what's good out there, but also what's bad. I guess by working with grassroots organisations, you get in, they've probably already identified, if we just had a bit more funding, we could do this and we could do that, and we've got this project in the pipeline, and it saves you so much thinking.
Definitely.
It is so efficient to work in a collaborative way, and I love that story about how working with Living Sport allowed them to really just invest in a particular area in a way they never would have been able to before. Are there any other stories you can tell about ABCD
definitely.
in action?
So ABCD in action, I think what I won't talk about COVID again because it takes up a whole nother show. So we've only got a short time. So I will talk about the cost of living hubs that we spoke about on one of our shows, but if you haven't heard it, you can go back onto YouTube and we'll be there. So that's the cost of living hubs that we have. 22 cost of living hubs in Peterborough, which supports people with fuel support, food support, prevention as in debt advice, things like that, white goods, some of them. So yes, so 22 cost of living hubs. So how did we go about funding them? And that is a pure example of how the theory that I was trained on, that asset-based community development theory, was put into practice. How, you might say? Well, 22 cost of living hubs have been there for years and years, some of them for many years, some of them, I'll be honest, haven't got off the ground so well, but with the funding we have managed to push them, give them that push that they needed to develop into organised groups, and that's what happened. So some of these groups had already worked with us during the support for community support during COVID, where they came forward, they had a bit of funding from our integrated community strategy. We repurposed that for support of COVID when things shut down. And those groups came forward and we saw the benefits, how much they benefited the community with that support that they gave on a neighbourhood level. We also mapped it so it was in pockets. So it was organisations that were already existing in pockets of poverty in Peterborough, ranging from Breton. So Wellspring Church is Breton. Then we've got all the way to, you've got the Dominion in the Milford area. We have got a cluster in this area only because the need was much more, where the poverty is higher in this area. However, we've got Good Neighbours, which is a rural hub, one of our rural hubs. So they deal with all the Thornies and the Eyes and all the village support that we fund them for that. So how that worked was we mapped it. We already knew that these organisations were active and doing really well in the community. We then looked at what the criteria was because we did have to stick with criteria in terms of their constitution and if they had a proper strategy in place and their proposals basically of what they were going to do for delivery. Some of them are delivering food parcels, so they're purely food banks delivering food parcels. Some of them, one hub is just delivering essentials like nappies and baby milk and stuff, because that was the need that came up and it still is. Some of them do community cafes that are based in churches. So, yeah, it's a mixture of organisations. So we have Bernardo's in there, we have Age UK, we have the Dominion, Black Church, we have iCare from Khadija Mosque, we have Fazana Medina Food Bank, we have all sorts. So it's a selection of 22 cost of living hubs. And the whole principle of ABCD, asset-based development, was behind that thinking of how to get money into neighbourhood communities where support is already there to fund organisations that are already doing a good job of it. So that goes back to the principle of let's focus on what's wrong and what's not wrong. Or what's not wrong, yeah.
But I guess the key is that those organisations, right, they're best placed to know what their communities need. And we have so many unique communities in Peterborough that you can't possibly be an expert on all of them, even if it's your full-time job, as we both know. So it's so important to have those partnerships in place. And I guess we're coming to a close of our show now, but we're definitely going to be back. And I guess what you just did there, Nisha, where you name dropped probably upwards of 10 community organisations in the city who are doing fantastic work. But that's what we're all about. We want to shed light on these things because the support is out there, and if the support's out there but it's not stretching far enough, that's where funders can really dig in and support, and there's so much opportunity. So tell us a bit more about what we want to speak about in the coming weeks.
So okay, before I do that, I think there's a little bit about asset-based development. We went to this conference, which is the ISLA conference. The reason why we came on the show to talk about this is because the response that we received was amazing. Like I said, Sister Samina gave us that platform to talk about it, but we had like organisations such as Anglia Ruskin University approach me and say that I'm doing a PhD on this. Could you come and talk to our students about how it works in practical form? So I'm here. I do cohesion as well. Recently, we're going to work on getting a group for set up for Albanians.
There's so many opportunities.
But we've got to go.
We're going to have to bring it to a close, but thank you for joining us. We're always about real people and real voices, and we will see you again soon.